Welcome to our tutorial for Shock, Social Science Fiction, the Humanities at Play edition. I'm joined by Dominic.
Hi.
Sébastien Patry.
Hi.
I'm Richard. We are Humanities at Play, and we are very happy to share this edition of the game with you and a little tutorial how to play.
Yep.
So, Shock, Social Science Fiction by Joshua A.C. Newman is a game that allows people to explore the possibilities of the social, political, and ethical implications of changes to society. It invites us to play some sort of a often science fiction story set somewhere in the future after some sort of significant change to the world. A shock that we might choose to explore becomes the lens through which we examine already existing and concerning social issues and looking at how they change as the result of some kind of often technological change, but it can be other types of changes as well. So we're going to run you through two different videos. We're going to do one right now, the one that you're watching. We're going to show you how to do world building and how to do setup for your Shock game. And then the next one will show you the anatomy of a scene, how to set up a scene and how to play through, what actual gameplay looks like. So that'll be video 2. That will come soon. All right, so for now, why don't we take a look at the first document that we need, which is our Shock and Issues grid. Yep. So on the Shock and Issues grid, we're going to start by defining one issue that concerns each of our players. You've probably been exploring some sort of social or political or moral or ethical issue that concerns you in the world throughout the semester. And this is a great opportunity for you to explore that issue. So we'd suggest that each one of the players identifies one issue. So here's an example of what we'd like to set up here. We decided that we'd like to talk about the issue of women's rights. Another concerning issue of our time is the blurred lines between professional and private life. Another prominent issue of our day is the attention economy and the rising tides of authoritarianism. Given that we're only 3 players here in our group, we're going to explore 3 issues. So these are the 3. And we're going to explore those issues through a world that's been changed through a shock where we've got actual functioning brain chips, direct human-computer interface. We conceived of those brain chips through sort of like defining our minutiae for the general world that we want to describe. We describe them as having a lot of the similar issues to what our smartphones might have. So, for example, they are, the implants themselves. They're a communication device that's often expensive. Like any phone you get is expensive. What do they run from? $300 to like $2,000 or something. Yeah, close to that. It's a serious amount of money, right? They exist of various tiers, much like smartphones, right? Like not all chips are created equal. And yet they are ubiquitous, so that they're like this significant investment that nearly everybody decides to eventually pick up. So this will be a world in which many, many people have decided to chip up their brain to be able to communicate directly with devices or directly with the internet, and therefore directly with each other. So it's sort of a information processing and communications device.
And not having the chip is like basically making sure that you're going to be socially excluded somehow, right? Like you're unable to connect with the web, you're unable to connect with other people, so it makes you some kind of a hermit to not have that chip.
Right. Let's see what else. Some other general minutiae that we decided to define for our world in which Web 4.0 has occurred, and we've got direct sort of like brain-to-brain communication, is that certain functions might exist beyond a paywall. The same way that a lot of subscription services exist for our existing devices where like there's a free version and then there's a paid version, or maybe there's multiple tiers of paid versions, or different paid apps that give you different functionalities to your phone. We could conceive of a brain chip that would work in a similar way with downloadable apps and subscription services, but that certain levels of performance exist behind a paywall. There's the possibility of like government wiretap, like the revelations of Edward Snowden don't go away in the world of Web 4.0. Yeah. Is it possible that there's a backdoor that through the web they're able to come and take a look at your what it is that you're thinking or where you've been in a way even more revealing than just following where your phone has been. This would have come into play if we were really, taking a look at a story that took place in this issue of authoritarianism. But, it could appear anywhere else. It's just something that's within the world of the stories that we're going to look at. And the final sort of the broad minutia that we decided to define was that the security is not perfect, right? Just the way that the security on your computer or on your telephone it's not perfect. There are things you could try to do to improve it, but, as you improve a better mousetrap, there will always evolve some sort of a better mouse. So the security is not perfect, so you better get a VPN and cross your fingers.
Yeah, and there's still all the issues with like phishing scam and all that stuff, like I don't know, downloading or clicking a link that you shouldn't download, and now you've just opened up your brain to someone else's.
And like ransomware and like all the whole deal.
Oh man, ransomware about your memories.
My gosh.
You will forget your childhood if you don't give me bitcoins.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. This is awful.
So you see, there are loads of other issues that we're not even going to explore in the stories that we're going to tell. But like this idea of the brain chip could have impacts that declinate across a variety of different types of issues. And that's what's a hallmark of a good shock for the game, is that it's some sort of a change that makes the world different than the world that we live in, and where the impact will not be the same for everybody, but it will impact everybody in some way. The fact that this is present in the world is going to have some sort of a bearing on everybody's life. So, let's say we were to take a look at these different issues, and we would have to then, for each issue, decide, well, who wants to be sort of our issue owner, who will play the antagonist, and who would like to play a protagonist, who will create a protagonist character that will have some sort of a story goal where they're dealing with that issue, where they're struggling against the problems caused by that issue. So we did that across our three different issues. We thought, for example, how do women's rights, the issue of women's rights, how does that get affected by these brain chips? Well, it's like, well, let's talk about the most intimate and the most dangerous of the power imbalances and the abuses that can come from that, from sort of gender politics. And let's take a look at like abusive relationships, just individual heterosexual relationships. So our protagonist here, played by Sébastien, would have been Velma. So Velma has got a controlling boyfriend named Vernon. Our minutia that we had generated here, like we were like, well, how do brain chips affect the question of women's rights? And we were like, well, right away, wouldn't it be possible, like the way that an abusive or controlling partner might use your phone or check your phone when you're not there, or put a tracking app on your phone or whatever, or ask you to send pictures all the time of wherever you were? Well, that becomes even more invasive and intimate when it's like stuck in your head, and moreover, what would add another level, if it was really in your head, is like, could your abuser go in and like hack your memories and gaslight you mechanically, like, or digitally, while you're asleep, let's say, like from their desktop computer or even from their chip? Could they use the security deficiencies of the technology to implant false memories, or to perhaps even more nefariously delete not such nice ones? To do some real gaslighting of that never happened, so that you actually believe it. Yeah,
so instead of just like trying to make you doubt about your memories, like you actually have the memory that fit the story of your abuser now. So like there's no, like you cannot go back and check the facts, because the facts have been did it in your mind directly.
So this one we'd have to play to find out what happens, but it's like, this is set up to be a really dark story, right? But Velma, as a protagonist, her story goal would have been to realize that she's being abused and get out, and this points at like the usefulness of the story goal, right? When we create a protagonist character, one of the most essential things that we are generating is the story goal. Like, what is it that we want this character to try to achieve by the end of the story? Or what do we want to have happen to this character by the end of the story? We don't know for sure that it's going to happen, but as a protagonist player, what is it that you'd like to see happen with your character?
Yeah, and in that case here, what is interesting about that goal is it's not like Velma doesn't know that she's in an abusive relationship, So it has this dramatic irony behind it, right? Like I, as a player, know something that the character doesn't, and we are trying to play to find out if she's going to realize that she's getting manipulated. Sometimes your story goal are going to align with your character's actual goal, right? Like you'll find a story goal that is through the eyes of that character, but here it's like no, it's a step back. I want something for that character, but the character doesn't know.
The character doesn't even know, right? The character doesn't even know that there's a problem that she should be dealing with at this point, and that's part of the dilemma that she's in. All right. What else? Well, we're concerned also with the blurred lines between professional and private life. So I was like, well, maybe I will play a character, Ted, the middle manager. Ted, the middle manager, has got an overbearing, micromanaging vice president who is tracking the things that he does, contacting him on the weekends, sending him notifications of reminders of things to do, tracking how much time he's spending in the bathroom, like just micromanaging him, but on a level that's enabled by this shock in technology. So some general minutia that we had generated about like, well, how could a brain chip in this world lead to more sort of authoritarian overreach on the part of an employer? The idea was that, well, maybe companies can have like administrator rights on a device that they finance. You know, like a company device that they paid for you to have, or one where they're paying your subscription to various apps or functionalities or whatever. When they're paying your data, do they, often there's a pop-up, you install the company version of Outlook or Office or XYZ whatever thing, like, do you accept that do you want your company to manage this device for you? And like you click yes or whatever, because that opens up other functionalities. What if that's something that's in your head? And then what can they do with that, to track you, to monitor you, or to get into more nefarious things, as we had discussed previously in this personal relationship. Also, we thought that perhaps it would be interesting that different services and different like levels of chip performance might be made available as perks for promotion within a company. And so Ted, the middle manager, our protagonist, really feels like Waldo, the micromanaging VP, is on his back all the time and literally in his brain all the time, just like overbearing and too present in his mind all the time. And so his story goal is to really free his mind from that condition. And I can conceive of two ways where the story might bring him that way. As a protagonist player, I'm going to need to generate ideas of what's he going to try to do towards that goal. And I see two paths for him forward where he might try to get that, where either he changes jobs, which will be difficult if his boss can track his movements, or get a promotion to the point where he's no longer under that manager and maybe unlocks better perks where his increased authority grants him increased autonomy. We'll see. Maybe it's not going to work out. We don't know. We got to play to find out. Finally, the issue that we're really going to look at today through our example that we're going to dive into more is this issue of the attention economy. So Dominic has created a protagonist character, a POV streamer. In our general minutia for the issue 3 of the attention economy, we thought of two interesting things that are sort of relate to the issues with technology and social media that exist already. One, ads in front of your eyes. If you've got a chip in front of your brain, it's no longer an ad that pops up on your screen. It's ads that pop up in front of your face. Isn't that fun? Two is the idea of POV influencers, right? It's no longer from the phone or from the desktop computer or whatever that people are streaming, but people might do streaming straight from like their eyes to your eyes, as if you are living in their head. Maybe even having access to their thoughts and their internal monologue. If they decide to turn that on, they could broadcast their thoughts to you as well, along with what it is that they're seeing. So you get to live through their eyes. So the last thing before we look deeper into this, we'll look at her story goal of, trying to get big enough to leave the platform that she's on, called Only Tips. And we'll look at Tippy, her Only Tips talent management bot, the interface that she interacts with that platform. It's personified as sort of an AI bot. That'll be the antagonist. But the first thing we need to do before we get deeper into these characters is looking across these various story threads that we're going to explore. These will be 3 different, rather independent stories taking place within one world affected by the same shock, showing how the same shock creates situations for characters to face the changed problems to these existing social issues. The last thing we need to do is to take a look here at Praxis. So Praxis is a reflection of how things get done in the world. And so you need to take a look at what are these different issues, who are these different characters, what is it that they do, how do they try to get things done in the world. And we need to find two opposing pairs of sort of broad actions or concepts, principles or values that are in opposition with each other. And they are the ways that things get done in the world. So we chose two opposed pairs. In this world, and these will be the same across all three issues, across all three storylines, and for the antagonist and protagonist for all of the characters. The poles of the Praxis are authenticity versus wearing a mask, right? Really letting out what it is that we think and feel unfiltered versus presenting what others expect from us or whatever's going to serve us best for others to see. So authenticity versus wearing a mask, being real or faking. And finally, the other one will be giving versus taking. You know, thinking about the concerns of others and, you know, authentically giving to them or whatever, just giving versus taking for myself. So do I give, or do I take?
Yeah, and it helps exemplify as well the fact that in that world, because everybody is using a chip directly in their brain, it shows that every relationship is kind of transactional now. It's about like, what do I get from this? What do I give up from this? So it like everything is commodified then. All social like relationships are being commodified that way. So like either you are a taker or a giver, and like we'll see what it gives. But like what is interesting is that these two pairs, they don't contradict one another, right? You can be fake and be a giver, can be fake and be a taker, and so on and so forth. So they need to all be possible for every character.
Yep. Right on. Okay. So let's take a look at how to create a protagonist and how to create an antagonist.
So, wow, Azura. So, I don't know why, but the attention economy issue really grabbed me, and I wanted to play a character that was dealing with that issue, not one that I wasn't interested in fleshing out the issue. I wanted to play someone that was struggling against this attention economy, being that nowadays with social media, everybody's trying to find subscribers, followers, that kind of stuff, right, to earn a living through like being popular online. So Azura is exactly this, right? She's still optimistic, she is still upbeat, and she wants to make it. She wants to be a self-made person, basically.
It's probably a good piece of advice for, you know, if you've been working on an issue and thinking about an issue all semester, and then you're bringing it into the game as one of the issues for your game, it's probably a good idea for you to play the antagonist and issue owner in that case. And because you're already sort of aware of what is it that bugs you about that issue, or what is it that concerns you about that issue in the world as it is. And so you're probably really well placed to live out the antagonism, to live out sort of the challenges to the and create problems for the protagonist player, and have somebody explore the issue as you understand it. So Dominic is going to be our protagonist player, and I will be the antagonist player for this one. So Azura is here in the issue of attention economy.
Yeah.
Under the shock brain chip. We're playing in the game called Brain Chip today. You know, that's our shock that we're exploring. And so when we're building the character, when we're building the protagonist character, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our character procedure, the character generation procedure over here. And the first thing will be to generate our features. So features are characteristics that make our protagonist unique. You're going to start off with 3. We can define those as sort of like occupation, look, and personality. And these each have a die beside them because our 3 initial features represent our starting dice pool whenever it is that we're going to roll dice to resolve conflicts. We'll get to that in a bit. That's probably the topic for video number 2. So we're going to define these 3, and we're not going to write anything right away here in lesson and scar. Those are sort of like our opportunities for character growth later on. Your character may fail to achieve what it is that they want right away, but they will grow and they will change as a result. And so your character is going to develop over time, and that will mechanically give them more dice to throw, increasing their chance for future success. So why don't you tell us about Azura and sort of our initial features here: occupation, look, and personality.
Well, interestingly enough, we know now that like there's been a growth in like the online sex work industry, and also like streamers online, influencers online, and also people who just like use Instagram stories to sell stuff, to promote their own ideology or ideas, and like trying to make a living off of the attention of other people online. So I had this idea of that Azura was someone trying to like, I don't know, showcase product, showcase lifestyle stuff. So she's going to stream her point of view and trying to talk about her struggle as trying to become that self-made person that she wants to be. So she's going to stream that point of view, but she's going to be on the platform where if people give her tips, it can kind of influence her to do stuff, right? To be a bit more edgy. Like, are you game to go and say to that homeless person that they smell bad or something like that? So she's getting tips from doing actions that people are tipping for, basically asking, right? Request from followers. And that's how she's earning her money, right? She's making a living of trying to please everyone online by streaming her point of view and doing stuff. Yeah.
But her basic content, maybe we'll talk about her basic content and what it is that she mostly talks about when we come down to like her links, because she's got a certain mindset that she tries to portray online. So what does she look like?
I thought about like, you know, sometimes streamers online, they have these headphones with cat ears, and they have like either it's dyed hair or even sometimes wigs. So she's going for a cat girl team, and her palette is basically purple, pink, lavender, these kind of colors here. So she's looking nice, she's looking well dressed, she's looking clean, and there's something a bit like innocent and naive about her whole look, basically, and how she presents.
And the way that she presents herself to the world plays out in her personality. So how would you characterize that?
Well, she is upbeat, she's full of energy, you know, the kind of streamer that started with, hey guys, like this. So that's the kind of vibe she gives off, and she's also a truly hopeful person, right? She really believes that if she works hard enough, if she hustle enough, she's going to succeed in life, and she's going to be big and famous and earn lots of money and be independent, right? Live the some kind of I don't know, elite lifestyle of rich and entitled people.
I think those expectations are probably an authentic expression of her ideology, which will play out in links over here. Hold on, I moved this. Let's move it back. Okay. So links are the next things that we're going to define for our protagonist as we're building it. So links are things that your protagonist is connected to. Identify a person or group in your protagonist's life and an idea or principle that's important to them. Your protagonist may invoke and risk these important links in a conflict and may see these relationships change as a result. Why don't we start in reverse order, since we were talking about the way that she sees the world? Tell us about her ideology.
Well, she's embracing what we define as hustle culture, right? She believes that being overworked is something that you should be proud of. Like you should talk about it, right, and stream about it and show it to people. Like, hey, look at all the effort I'm putting in this lifestyle. I'm building my own brand, all that kind of stuff. So she's very optimistic, and she thinks that's being a workaholic is basically a virtue. So she doesn't know that she's on a path of self-destruction, but that's something else.
And she also wants to inspire others with it, right?
Like
it's hustle, grind, set plus like live, laugh, love. It's all of that.
Yeah, she's trying to tell people to be their own person and stand up for themselves and show autonomy and that kind of stuff, like attitude. But like she's also projecting this a whole lot, and it's something that she actually hoped she were more like, but she actually craves the attention of people so much that she's not that independent person. She's quite dependent.
Isn't she sweet?
Yep.
All right. No, she's relatable.
Yeah.
Right? This is a relatable character.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about relationships? There's somebody or some group that's important to her.
Well, she's got an actual boyfriend in real life, not an online relationship, and like the boyfriend doesn't follow her. He's not exactly into that kind of stuff. He's okay that she's doing this for a living. It's fine, but like he's, I don't know, maybe he's more of a gamer type, so he follows other people online. He's not into what she's doing, but he's okay with this, and she kind of needs to hide that sometimes she's doing stuff that could be, let's say, morally questionable, right? To earn tips. So the big risk here is that either the boyfriend actually learns about this, starts following her online, goes through the whole archives of videos and streams, and maybe he learns something that he doesn't like about Azura and his girlfriend. Like maybe he never thought that she was like that, basically.
So we see that we've got a situation that's set up with stakes, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen in the story, but we've got some inkling of what are some of the threads that we might want to explore as we play to find out what happens. The most important part of your character build is going to be in defining a story goal. So your story goal is what you want for your protagonist in the foreseeable future. Foreseeable to you, the player, not to the character necessarily, right? This could be something that your character wants, but it's not necessarily something that your character is aware of. In this case, she is aware of it.
Yeah.
So that your player goal and the character's goal are one and the same. So relative to the specific issue at the heart of their story, we define a story goal. And that is going to be the whole center of this character's story. This character is going to take proactive steps, trying to move closer and closer toward this story goal. And then getting in the way of that will be the central idea that sets us up to build a meaningful antagonist. So tell us about her story goal.
Well, I wanted her to try and strive to make the attention economy work for her, actually. So for now, she's uploading her stream on a platform on the tips, and platform is what is earning her money, but she's hoping to get enough followers to become big enough of a figure online that she doesn't need a platform. She can create her own .com thing, right? And people could follow her, but only her, right? She can cut the middleman, right? Because right now the platform is taking a cut from the tips she's making, but she wants to kind of regain some kind of autonomy, right? Not being dependent on tips either, right? She wants to be big enough that people will actually seek her, and she doesn't need to do some kind of attention-seeking stuff instead.
And so one big obvious means by which she could do that is by trying to get some sort of a sponsorship, to get some sort of major advertisers to back her directly.
Yeah.
All right, great. And so of our 4 Praxis, we just copied this straight off of the Shock and Issues grid. Shock and Issues grid. They are authenticity, wearing a mask, giving, and taking. When we define these 4 poles of Praxis and mark them onto our character sheet, we then need to take a look at one that's going to be our favored Praxis. So pick a favored one for your character and mark it with an X.
So I went with giving for Azura because she's always she's selling herself out in that attention economy thing. She also tries to give attention to her boyfriend and relationship. She's giving her time away. She's that grinding and hustle culture that she's going through is basically her always giving, and she thinks that she's doing something for her, but she doesn't take any time for her, basically. And she can be giving either by being authentic or by wearing that mask, but she's always acting to please other people, basically. Yep.
Okay. So the next step in setting up to play for this issue is going to be to define who's the antagonist. So we have to ask ourselves, who is the person or group, what is the face of antagonism and the force of antagonism that would get between Azura and her story goal of trying to get big enough to get a sponsorship and leave only tips? And so I, as the antagonist player, decided the one who's going to get in the way is the talent management bot for Only Tips. It's her interface with Only Tips. It's sort of like the personified algorithm that communicates to her, sends her notifications, encourages her, and helps her to become a better streamer. Sometimes acts as the middleman, communicating demands or requests from anonymous tippers, and who can also give her some insights into analytics and the working of the algorithm so that she can make the most of her stream. And we decided to call him Tippy. So let's talk about Tippy.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme here at Humanities at Play that Richard is always playing some voices in my head.
Some voices in his head, and often this is going to be old for those of you who remember the 90s in the before time, but like the Microsoft Word paperclip, Clippy, who would always show up at unwanted times to let you know, like, hey, it looks like you're trying to write a letter. Do you want some help? Except that in your head.
Yep.
So that's this guy. That's Tippy. So let's talk about Tippy. So the antagonist name, Tippy, the only tips bot. The protagonist here is Azura, playing in the attention economy. So when I am fleshing out Tippy as a character is going to have, as an antagonist character, is going to have 5 minutiae. So when you're defining your antagonist, you need to define 5 major details about your antagonist. Remember that your antagonist represents the character that acts as the face or main point of contact between the protagonist and whoever or whatever will stand in the way of their story goal. So in this case, what's going to stop her from becoming big enough to leave the platform? Well, the one that wants her to stay in the platform and do well within the platform, but perhaps limit how well she can actually do on her own and limit her capacity to carry out agency outside of the platform and its needs. So that's going to be this one. You will always have 5 minutiae, never more, never less. So let's define some minutiae for Tippy. Name and occupation? Well, he's Tippy, the talent management bot at
Only Tip.
Only Tips. His look, he looks like a paperclip, but with a top hat and a monocle. And, you know, when you receive a tip, he tips his top hat to you. Because I don't know.
We're going directions, people.
Like, yeah.
Well,
We don't want to get sued for copyright infringement by
Either.
Microsoft. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
put a hat and a monocle.
We had
on.
to disguise him. Maybe he's got a mustache.
oh yeah, it's trolling the message and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
His personality is upbeat and helpful. Even though he is like... He's sort of the villain of our story, but it doesn't mean, and this is important for building our antagonist,
Yeah.
right? Your antagonist, you're going to have to play an antagonist at some point in somebody else's story. And your antagonist player and your protagonist player are not enemies, you're dance partners. And the role of the antagonist player is to render the protagonist's story more interesting by presenting difficulties and dilemmas for them. Likewise, the antagonist character isn't necessarily the protagonist's enemy, per se. They don't necessarily have to be like at each other's throats. They can be like husband and wife. They can be brother and sister. They can be, you know, like boss and employee. They could be like any number of different types of relationships. There can be antagonism, but they don't necessarily have to be like enemies. They can be enemies, but they don't have to be.
Yeah.
And in this case, he's not her enemy.
No.
He's her coach, and he's her, you know, he's her meal ticket, and he's her just the middleman to the interface.
Yeah, the issue with Tippy is that he is there to ensure that the platform keeps extracting value out of Azura, basically.
Right.
That's the evil part of it, but Tippy itself is just there to be helpful.
His personality is always upbeat and helpful.
Yep.
His resources are that he's got, you know, access to all the analytics. He knows what she's done and what works. He knows what kinds of demographics she's managing to reach. And he knows what's happening outside on other users and streamers of the platform. So he's got a broader sense of what works and what sorts of demographics she might want to branch out to. So he's got useful information for trying to manage and improve her performance. And he's also got a certain amount of control over like ramping up or turning off the spigot of the algorithm of how much she gets promoted to a wider audience. So he's got some control over the algorithm, and he's got access to that analytic data. Another good minutia to define for an antagonist is an ally. Do they have some sort of like other outside forces that they are in contact with? And in this case, it's the advertisers, right? Tippy, as a representative of, Only Tips, is also in contact with the companies that advertise on Only Tips. You know, we said that we've got ads that pass in front of people's eyes. Well, maybe on certain streams, they supplement the revenue with ads. And so like he's got access to those advertisers, but those advertisers are also an essential possible place where Azura might find her eventual independence, and he interjects himself between her and them. Right? So that's another potential source of conflict. Our protagonist story goal, this was the central part really of our antagonist sheet, is to understand that Azura needs to get big enough to leave the only tips, and we're not going to let her do that. So Praxis.
Yep.
We took a look at the same Praxis as before. Authenticity, wearing a mask, giving and taking. You know, like, sometimes Tippy gives, sometimes Tippy takes. But Tippy has no authenticity. Whatever it is that what he is doing, he's always just wearing the mask of upbeat and helpful. Upbeat and helpful to you, right? Always presenting whatever it is, whatever advice he's giving or whatever bad news he's delivering or whatever it is as like constructive feedback to help you and to inspire you and encourage to create inspiring and engaging content. Your content is so engaging. You know what could drive more engagement? It looks like you're trying to drive engagement.
Because what Only Tips is trying to sell to its users, right, to people who are streaming, is the idea of empowerment, right? When you go there, you are your own boss. You can make your own money, earning a living through these tips that you're receiving. But the truth of it is the platform is only there to extract value from other people doing stuff, right? The platform itself, they're not proposing any content. Like, you're giving off content to the platform. So there's this thing where Clippy isn't evil per se. He's not trying to deceive, but being the face and hiding and disguising this extraction of value, that's him wearing a mask, right? And hiding what Only Tips is really about, basically.
Yeah. This corporate sponsor logo of like a Mr. Peanut, but it's really like the Microsoft Word clipper. Like, I'm going to edit that out. Okay.
It's fine.
Maybe I won't, whatever. So yeah, so that creates our antagonist play sheet, and that sort of wraps up our, our world building. We would go through those same steps of creating a protagonist and antagonist for each one of these storylines, right? You're going to play a protagonist facing one of these issues affected by this shock. You're also going to play the antagonist and create an antagonist character that's going to get in the way of that character's story goal. And we recommend that you play the antagonist in whatever issue is the one that you brought to the table as being one that we should examine. If you think it's important and problematic in the world, then you understand why it's already a problem, and you might better understand how to play out however that problem gets complicated or made worse by the shock. All right? So you get to play the bad guy on that one. And so that's it for world building. Defining the issues and the shock, thinking about the minutiae that surround the shock and each of the issues, beginning to think about how the shock affects the issues, thinking of which issue we'd like to create a protagonist in and what will be the story goal of that protagonist, so that then somebody else can create an antagonist character that gets in the way of that story goal. You do that once for each issue and your world building is complete. In our next video, you'll discover how to play out scenes, how many scenes to play, how to set up a scene, how to role play them, and then how to bring them to the point where they resolve in a conflict.